Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So, how is everybody's week? Oh my gosh, I have this little tiny gray hair. I just pulled it out. These, ay, ay, ay. Okay. I need to get my hair cut and colored so bad. Karina is here. Survival is here. Lakeview. Hello, hello. Sherry. Hello, hello. Crystal Mountain. Changing my life. Anything new and exciting going on with everyone? Jack says a bit early. Yes, we are a few minutes early. Let's see. Blue Moon says hello, all. Crystal Mountain says, I'm divorced as of last week, but the narcissist is still up to games. Yeah, that sounds about right. Congratulations on your divorce. I hope that um, you're able to have an optimistic outlook, I guess, on this next chapter in your life. And Jack says, I'm sorry, I'm just really struggling right now. Emotional flashbacks with the works. Oh, goodness. What's going on, Jack? What do you think that's about? Huffle Mom says, hello, Dana. You're looking very relaxed this evening. Yes, I am. It's been a rainy, dreary day, and I love days like that. So I just have been kind of, lounging around the house and getting stuff done. Yeah, I can imagine. Crystal says, absolutely. I'm looking forward to life, narcissist free, just still very stressful at the moment. Yes, I can imagine. Jack says, Huffle Mom and I went to a brand new dentist. I was with another dental clinic for 35 plus years. Oh, yeah. Going to the dentist is always incredibly stressful, especially a new one. It's like going to a new mechanic, you just, oh, yeah, stressful. Kevin says that he went to the dentist yesterday too. Oh, how's that going? If I remember correctly, Kevin, wasn't that a big thing for you with going to the dentist and something that you'd been avoiding for a long time? Jack said, yeah, the breaking point was trying to explain to my father the procedures that Huffle Mom needs. Oh boy. Does she need to get a lot of work done? I'm guessing if it's procedures as in plural. Kamami says, bonsoir. Bonsoir, Kamami. Yeah, Kevin says, for me, it's a money issue. Dental work is very expensive in my country. Yes, it's expensive here too in the US, even with health insurance. It's actually any medical care here, even with health insurance, is still ridiculously expensive. Lori says, I'm listening to a book on hoopla called And Life Comes Back. 30 minutes in, found it on Focus on the Family on the radio today. Well, that's cool. Is it a good book so far? I like the title. Oh boy. Huffle Mom was saying, I have an open bite, which has resulted in unusual wear on my back teeth. Fixing it completely will require braces and surgery to reposition my jaw. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, sounds like a long road, a long, expensive road. Oh, that's cool. Changing my life says I'm feeling relaxed today. I'm listening to old school reggae while at work and also listening in. So I'm multitasking today. Oh, I like that. I love old school reggae. It's like instant summertime, when you put on that kind of music, it's just you're just relaxed and everything's good. Aaron asks, "Hey, why is it so annoying when you get flying monkeys after 9 months?" Are you asking why is it so annoying or why are you getting flying monkeys after 9 months? I guess I'll just answer your question and then you set me straight if I'm going in the wrong direction here. I think it's annoying because it's people that are only understanding the situation from the perspective of the problematic person. And so, you're getting harassed by people that don't understand the full picture of what was going on. So that's annoying. And then having to still deal with it, would you say 9 months later, it's sort of like, man, I just want this to be over with. It's sort of like trying to and getting rid of a person, uh, a manipulative person who just can't let go because they've got to be right. They've got to prove their point. It's like trying to scrape gum off of the bottom of your shoe. It just takes a long time and it's difficult and it's annoying and it's just like God, just go away. Yeah, and Kevin says, and some people gain energy from harming others. Yep. So that's a lot of it. It just makes them feel significant and special and important to know that they can rile you up and um, you're just not dealing with, I don't know, you're not sharing the same reality, I guess is a way to say it. Oh boy. Sunny says the latest covert narcissist in my life left me for another woman. He blocked me from Facebook for 3 months ago. I went no contact. Then I recently discovered he has over 50 fake Facebook accounts in his name and city. And then she asks, why block me and then keep track of me? I blocked them all. Oh boy. Yeah, their behavior really doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just control. It's just control. Maybe he's concerned that you're going to say something, that you're going to out him. Maybe he wants to just, with people like that, you're not dealing with reasonable, rational behavior. So it might he might have the mindset of he feels entitled to sleep with whoever, but he's not okay for you to do the same, or he's not okay for you to move on and actually have a real relationship with somebody. It's the whole kind of do as I say, don't do as I do kind of a thing. So that could be there's lots of different things that could be going on, but at a minimum, I would look at that behavior and be like, total validation that this is not what you want in your life. And, trying to to guess his intentions is just an exercise in crazy making. Darling Ebony says, I so badly want to write one of my narcissists a letter telling him what I think of him. However, he is emotionally unstable and might hurt someone. He's part of a religious cult. Well, you can still, and she says, I need him to know how I feel, but I know he can harm others. His cult would allow him to do it. Yeah, and I agree, Jack. Jack is saying, go ahead, write the letter, but don't send it to him. I agree. You're not dealing with a reasonable, rational person, especially if he's in a cult, especially if he's in a cult that's going to support that kind of behavior. So it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of your time trying to get him to understand how you feel. Um, you know, if he's that personality disordered, if his view of uh his behavior and his level of entitlement and his view of other people's behavior is that skewed, that he just like really doesn't understand that he caused you pain, you trying to improve your communication with him and let him know isn't going to do anything. It's just going to make him kind of dig further in, because if he most likely feels entitled and justified to treat others the way that he does. It's infuriating. I get it. I completely get it. So, um, I guess just kind of realizing, okay, these are his limitations. Like, this guy is not the man that you thought he was. You're not sharing the same reality with him. And so realizing this guy just doesn't get it. So you can still write all that down and express yourself, but I would encourage you to, if you're going to do that, then have some friends over and have a party where like a releasing party where you burn the letter or you bury it or you do something and you make it into like a celebration of this next chapter in your life, or kind of no more um just no more things that waste your time. That something like that, instead of giving any more energy to him. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Aaron says, I wrote a letter to mine and never sent it. Fatima asks, how long am I going to be live? I'll be live. I might be signing off early tonight, but I'll be here for at least an hour. Yeah, well, that's a good point, Kenneth. He says, letting a narcissist know how you feel is probably going to be amusing to them anyway. Yeah. They don't get it. You're dealing with somebody who, uh, best case is very emotionally immature. Worst case, they're pathologically immature and potentially dangerous. They're really not in the same reality. They're delusional, they're paranoid. Um, you know, you're there be just the level of entitlement. It's just a very disturbed personality that you're dealing with. Let's see here. Darling Ebony says, yeah, he would say the craziest things and I would say nothing to try to get him therapy. He was not this way in high school. He was my high school sweetheart. Yeah. And he might have some mental illness too that developed later on in life. That's not uncommon for sometimes, um, you know, paranoid schizophrenia or schizophrenia in general tends to develop in the person's 20s. So that could, I mean, I'm not trying to diagnose him, but there's other things that could be going on besides just, I say just a personality disorder. But either way, that's significant. I mean, it's either way you cut it, it's significant, and it's not possible to have, uh, a functional relationship with somebody who has deeply dysfunctional beliefs or mindsets or behavior. Okay, let's see. Mandy, I only caught part of. Oh, here he goes. Mandy says, my ex left me, but is trying to force the children to see him and then refuses to help with shopping as I'm disabled, but texts the children to ask if they want takeaway. I'm constantly in fear as he can't see his behavior is wrong. My mental health team wants me to prosecute, but I want peace. But he's the children's father. Yeah, that's difficult. And that's one of those situations where thankfully you have a mental health team and that you guys can sit down and kind of map out, okay, well, what are the options? How could this be handled? And then um, kind of picking one that you think is best. But if you have a difficult partner, there's a term out there instead of co-parenting, which is what most people want to do if whether they're married or divorced. You're trying to work as a team with this other person. But with really problematic people like this, co-parenting isn't possible because it's just they want things their way all the time and they don't care how it impacts other people. So um it's co-parenting isn't really possible, but there's a term called parallel parenting where it is basically as close as you're going to get to co-parenting. So you're kind of parenting your way, he's parenting his way. You're trying to limit damage control and you're adjusting your expectations. This is a big one. You're adjusting your expectations to meet reality, the reality of who he is. So um, realizing, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that he does, and um, he's not he's there's nothing that you're gonna say that's gonna just all of a sudden make him start, behaving appropriately. So, because he for sure has no incentive to do so now. But I would talk to your mental health team. Mandy says, "I don't know how to deal with him in a non-conflict way." Well, there's a lot of different apps out there, that are like third party type things. So I would encourage you to consider using an app. Um, Ideally creating some sort of paper trail when you do have to deal with them. And if you find yourself just too overcome with emotions, uh, to try, so like if you see him in person, if he comes to the door or if he calls you, those kinds of things, if that's too emotional and you're not liking, um, if you're just too reactive during those times, then kind of going with that and being like, okay, I need to send emails. I need to tag, I need some space and time to breathe and collect my thoughts before I respond. So um, that can be helpful. And then also telling yourself when you are responding to him, ideally in written format, because it'll help you. You can edit your thoughts and you're not on the spot trying to hold it together. To think, to always be thinking, and this goes for any person, um, pretty much in any situation with communication, is thinking, what would a judge say? If somebody else, if there was a third party here, especially a judge, what would they say about this communication? So sometimes that can help to kind of moderate your behavior when you think about, okay, if the judge was standing over my shoulder or was reading all of this, or I had to go to court and justify all of this, how would this look? And is this something that I would want to have read out loud? Uh, so it can be helpful to kind of think of it that way. Let's see here. Mystique says, "Hey Dana, do you think that if somebody was covertly trying to hurt someone else, that makes them a psychopath?" No, not necessarily. Um, there's lots of different reasons people, lash out at other people. Sometimes I guess it just depends on the situation, like how calculated is it? It's definitely a sign of some some deeper issues. It's not normal. That's not normal behavior, but and it's worth getting your distance from. So let's see here. Um, Oh, 100%. Alicia says, I feel like when the ex was confronted with the pain he'd caused someone else, the only reason he felt bad at all was because of his image. He wanted to be seen as a nice guy. Yeah. That goes for a lot of them that are really problematic is that's the image. I mean, you look at Bill Cosby or really anybody that's been caught that's had this whole facade built up that they're this really great person, and then they get caught in some sort of sex scandal or fraud or murder or some sort of horrific crime, and they try to backpedal and backpedal and backpedal because they want the world to see them a certain way, and their behavior doesn't line up with that. So yeah, and it's interesting when you realize wow, it's they're just crying because of their image. I was watching a YouTube video last night. It was on autoplay, and I don't even know. It started playing something about serial killers, and um, it was kind of just different weird facts about serial killers, and one of them had to do with this one killer who I don't even remember who it was, but he was on trial and. Um, all of the victims' family and stuff were getting up and were telling him, all kinds of things. You're going to burn in hell, and God will get you for this, and blah blah blah. And they were very upset, right? And then he had one of his victims' father stood up and said, oh well, I forgive you, and said something that was seemingly very compassionate, and the guy started crying. And I thought it was so great because the judge saw through that. And the judge told the guy, the serial killer, something along the lines of, um, basically, save your tears. This is not the time or the place to be crying for yourself. I thought, yep, because that's exactly what it is. It's, he was crying. It was about, oh my gosh, I'm really going to have to do this time. And I want people to still somehow think that I'm like this decent person and that has some sort of remorse for their actions. But it's just all about them all the time. Okay, let me. Oh, Mystique says, oh, he loosened the lug nuts on our car the night before I took it out. Are you certain? I guess, how do you know that? And did you confront him? And that kind of behavior is, um I mean, that's attempted murder. That, to me, that goes past covert, uh, you know, covert abuse. I guess when I think of covert abuse, I think of more like emotional, psychological stuff that kind of flies under the radar for most people, or physical abuse that's not in a so obvious way. I mean, that's, just outright sabotaging your vehicle. Let's see here. Um, yeah. Darling Ebony makes the comment to Mandy saying, well, he's probably telling others that you're bad mouthing him because he's likely bad mouthing you. And yeah, and that's also a way for a person to do damage control. Like it's so wild because, for a normal, decent person, when you're going through something like this, it's not even on your radar to think about just flat out making up stories. And it didn't dawn on me for a long time with my ex that was what had happened. I remember I had to go get some of my stuff, and I walked into where he was working, and I was getting, like, the stink eye from everybody in there, and I was so upset and angry and hurt by that because I thought, "You've gotta be kidding me. Like, why is everybody looking at like, glaring at me when I didn't do anything wrong?" And it didn't even cross my mind for a while, for, like, months, for a while, that he could have possibly just told them something, and I'm sure he did, completely false. And then once I began to realize just the level at how much this guy lied about everything, even when the truth would work better. I mean, he just lied to lie. Then realizing that, it was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And that feels, I mean, that level of, that smear campaign is really, really hurtful when you realize, "Oh my gosh, this person's completely just making up stuff," or they're saying that they're projecting. They're saying that what they did to me is what I did to them. And they're making themselves into the victim of all this. Like, that's just it's wild, wild. Um, okay, let's see here. Let me scroll down. Okay, Mystique said, "Yeah, he was working on the tires, and I did confront him. He just denied it." How did you come to realize that the lug nuts were loose? And I guess if you honestly think it's not a mistake, um, you know, if there's more to the story, if this is just kind of the icing on the cake kind of thing, but there's been a history of concerning behavior there before, I hope that you're seriously considering getting away from this person. Um, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Let's see. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Lori says, so writing down all the crazy things my ex did, do you think that'll help? It can help I mean, I guess it depends on like what you're hoping it would help with, but it can help remind you of why this relationship is toxic and why you need to not go back, which I think is really helpful because it just snaps you into the present moment and you're like, "Oh yeah, okay, all that nostalgia is just it's It's kind of my brain cherry picking the best of the events, not seeing the whole situation clearly. Oh boy. Bliss says, my NPD brother, psychopath, sociopath, destroyed my mother and father. They finally died. He lies, steals, cheats, steals our money, sued me for everything that mom and dad left me. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. My heart just goes out to you. Yeah, that's not uncommon. Just that sense of entitlement and just rotten, horrific behavior. And of course, I'm sure he thinks he's the victim in all of this, right? That's the other part that's just so infuriating. It's uh that just that level of that lack of understanding. It's wild. Yeah, Elizabeth, you're right. She says, they don't operate like humans. That's why we can't understand what they do. Right. It's a completely like upside down mindset. I guess that's probably the best way to understand it. It's if you've seen the show Stranger Things, okay? If you've seen that show, they have the upside down world place. And it looks similar to the regular world, except it's dark and spooky and eerie and doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's monsters running around. Like that's their reality. Like you have the normal functional reality, but then you have like the upside down world where everything is upside down. Like normal world, the um, you know, I don't know, primary mindset is um kind of agreeability, team orientedness. A person has the ability to be to function on their own, but then to also work well with others. They don't have that mindset. It tends to be more domination driven. It's all about them all the time. They're always right. They're always going to get their way. Um, kind of consume and destroy anyone in their path. Um, I don't know. It's just take whatever normal, like a normal, decent mindset is, and then think about the opposite. Instead of, open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, it's closed, dishonest, insincere, uh, you know, crazy making, manipulative communication. It's the exact opposite, but it's in a negative way. And it's infuriating and exhausting. Liberty says, I do not want to rush into another relationship. I just want to wait to find my true partner for life. But my family thinks that I'm hurt because of the breakup and should move on. Should I explain myself? Well, you don't need to. I mean, you don't need to explain yourself to anybody. You could, uh, and the thing is, normal people, like people that haven't gone through something like this, they really don't understand. And they have that mindset of, uh, you got to love like you've never been hurt before, and you got to get back out there. And, what happened to you was a fluke. And, not everybody's like your ex, and you got to trust sometime. And there's all kinds of platitudes that are thrown out to, in an attempt to make them feel better, I think, about our situation, but then also to try to make you feel better about your situation. But all it really does is it's invalidating and minimizing and completely misses the trauma that you went through. So, um, yeah, I think you're wise to for sure to not rush into another relationship and to wait and, to go at a pace that you're comfortable with and, um, you know, so, I mean, you could acknowledge to them, like, I appreciate your concern, but it's okay to hold your boundary. I appreciate your concern. Uh, I'm totally open to dating as soon as I find somebody worth dating. Like, because that sounds like the truth. That's what you're doing. Spiritual goddess says, I realize I'm in a trauma bond with my mom and I'm trying to go no contact, but my mind keeps doubting me so much. Do you recommend I leave on low contact and then break it off later when I'm strong? You can do, and I encourage you to do whatever you have the most peace about. Um, if it's a really unhealthy, abusive situation with her, there will come a point where you'll know when it's time. You'll have enough, like you'll get to a point where you've just had enough and you'll have peace about when you need to fully break it off. But if right now you're like, gosh, I think low contact, um I still want to maybe try some other strategies or what have you, by all means, you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, it's your life um and that's okay. You don't have to necessarily break things off with her 100%. If you still want to have some sort of relationship, even though it's really small, where you call her, I don't know, a couple times a year, or you see her, infrequently, or whatever's comfortable for you, you can absolutely do that. I would just encourage you to to see the situation how it is and to let go of hope that she's going to be the the mom that you wish she was. And so when you see things, see the situation as it is, then you're able to better prepare for it. So then you realize, okay, well, I'm going to go visit mom for her birthday, and knowing it's going to be exhausting, it's going to be dramatic, it's going to be, she's probably going to say some hurtful things, what have you. I'm going to go there. I'm going to meet her at a restaurant or at her house or whatever. I'm going to stay for about an hour and a half, and then I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to call a good friend and like process this, or I'm going to line up a therapy session the next day. You're going to do things to support you so you're able to, so it's not so draining. Mystique says, okay, after 20 years, she finally kicked him out. Yeah, okay. Then it sounds like there's been a long-standing history of concerning stuff. And how are you doing? How are you doing with all of that now? Because that can be really traumatic. Even just thinking that somebody that you're with is potentially trying to kill you is terrifying. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, I agree, Kenneth. He says, telling someone to move on is invalidating and abusive. Yes. Yes, it is. And just it's so insensitive too. And I know this kind of stuff tends to come from people that are well-meaning, but boy, I tell you, it would be so great if some of the more major things in life were discussed. How to handle grief, how to understand grief, how to understand trauma, like different types of trauma, the different causes of trauma, the different ways that people tend to process or not process trauma. Um, you know, so much of these real life skills, we all go through this. If you've lived for any length of time, like, you're going to experience grief and loss and trauma and pain and heartbreak, and all of that is just part of this human experience. And but we're not equipped to handle it, and then people wonder, um there's so much pain, unnecessary pain out there from people suffering because they're not equipped with the skills needed to handle these things. And it just bothers me at such a core level because it's not necessary, especially these days with the internet and how connected the world is. Like it's not this massive challenge to find information. Um, it's just so frustrating. Let's see. Spiritual goddess says, thank you so much for answering my question. I just can't do that to myself. I don't think I would be able to forgive myself if I allow her to abuse me again. It doesn't feel good intuitively. Maybe time will show me because right now I'm not ready, but I just know, and then typing a message, but it's not there yet. Um, Let me just address this real quick. One of the big shifts that can really help with staying low contact with a problematic person is, well, it's really important to have boundaries and to to set the pace of the relationship. So like I was saying, if you were, or if anybody else out there is thinking about, okay, well, I don't want to cut ties completely, but I really want to limit ties, then thinking about, okay, how can you make this work for you? You know, instead of having them over to your house, because that's them setting the pace, because you can't really easily control getting them to leave, you meeting them at their house, you having your own ride, or you meeting them in public someplace, and you knowing ahead of time. I mean, don't it helps to not think about, okay, best case scenario. So instead of being like, oh, I'm going to go visit them for Christmas and I'm going to stay for 2 weeks, when every other interaction with them has always been 2 hours into it, and you're ready to, um, do whatever it takes to get out of there. Don't set yourself up to fail. Set yourself up to win and realize, okay, well, I'm gonna stay for maybe 4 days, and I'm gonna stay in a hotel. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like you have to figure out where your line of comfort is with this kind of thing. But something else that can help with staying low contact is because you don't have control over her behavior, but you do have control over how you process it. So it's making the shift of seeing instead of internalizing that. So if she's just really ugly and I don't know, picking on you about whatever, or just saying whatever she's doing, uh, to truly see that as like, we don't have to let that in. That doesn't even really have to even hurt your feelings, you know? Um, but it's okay if it does, but we don't need to absorb that. Like you can decide, like, okay, this is a reflection of her and her behavior. Like she's really just rude and abusive and inappropriate and immature, and that's on her. Like this isn't hurting me at all because this is just how she is. For whatever reason, this is how she is. This is not who I am. Um, she's just saying words, and to let that bounce right off of you. Easier said than done, I know. And spiritual goddess says, well, maybe time will show me intuitively kind of, that line. But I think you have the answers that you're seeking. If you're knowing that, okay, I cannot have contact with her right now because I just cannot be abused by her again, then there's your line, you know? So you'll, you know, you'll know. And I think that's a really great line to be like, you know what? I have value and I deserve and expect to be treated with dignity and respect. Like these are just the basics of human interaction. This is what we expect. It's the basics of polite behavior. Um, so it's not an unreasonable request. let's see here. Let me scroll up. Oh, yeah. UNA, hi, says they expect you to be perfect, their ideal of perfection, which is impossible, but they are imperfect humans too, even parents. Oh, yes, very much so. You still have to have boundaries, but that helped me to not hurt so much. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When you can see, I know in my life, the difficult people that I've had in my life was realizing that um, a lot of that behavior, they're just, and I'm not saying this to excuse it by any stretch, but it helped me to have more compassion when interacting with them and to not take it personally. Was realizing, okay, they're just, man, they were very damaged from some things that they went through in their life. And that's really unfortunate that they're not able to connect with other people in a more healthy, loving, nourishing way, you know? And um, doing that, it just, it helped so much to drop a lot of like the defensiveness and the need to continue to, uh, try to communicate with them. Well, what you're doing is not appropriate and da 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 da. It, it helps me to think of it along the same line of, like a person with Alzheimer's, for example, where there's brain changes going on. Like my expectations, like my grandmother, for example, had Alzheimer's. My expectations with her were appropriate for somebody who had Alzheimer's. I didn't expect her to remember anything. I didn't expect her to, you know, to cook or to clean or to pay her own bills or to, um, remember who I was or to remember to take her medication or um, to even behave how she used to, or to even behave appropriately in general. So I wasn't, because of that, I wasn't surprised. Well, I was still sometimes a little bit surprised by her behavior, but I wasn't upset by it because it was sort of like, okay, these are her limitations. And her forgetting my name doesn't mean that I'm not important or that I don't have value. It means there's stuff that's going on with her. And if she, um, you know, isn't, or if she gets angry very quickly, or if she has, gets upset or starts accusing people of stealing or whatever, it's, it's, we're not sharing the same reality. And then kind of realizing, my goodness, there's a lot that's going on with her and how scary that must be to have your reality be completely different than the reality of those around you. That's a very difficult way to live. So kind of coming at it from that point of view can be helpful. And of course, this is not to say to not protect yourself or have boundaries, but when your expectations match reality, especially another person's behavior, um, that's the only way that we can start acting accordingly and acting appropriately, because then we can start anticipating what they might potentially do. It's when we keep holding on to hope that that we're gonna have these normal, decent interactions with the person who doesn't have normal, decent behavior. That's when we're setting ourselves up to fail. So that's a big mindset shift that we can make. It brings so much more peace into your life when you just really fully realize like, yep, that's their limitation. This is what I'm dealing with. You know, It's like it is what it is. Let's see. Jennifer. Let me scroll up. Where is your question? Oh, she says, okay. What is it that makes a person overly apologetic? I used to be this way, but I think I'm getting better with it. And Jack, where is your comment? Because it was fantastic. Oh, there's so many good comments going on here. uh, Let's see. Well, Huffle Mom commented, if you are finding yourself apologizing for things you can't control or aren't responsible for, then this would be over apologizing. And Jack comments, yeah, I think it's part of what, um, oh, I think you mean Pete Walker, the Pete Walker defense of the fawning response. Unless Peter Levine was the one that I only know that associated with Pete Walker, but maybe I'm wrong. Um, where that fawning is over apologizing to placate an abuser, and then it sticks as a coping habit. Yeah, there can be that, or it can be a result of, just different types of attachment styles. So, um, excessive people pleasing generally comes out of that fear of we don't want to be abandoned. So it's the if the only way to keep the relationship is intact is for us to assume all responsibility for everything. If it's always our fault, then we're the problem, right? Not the other person. We're the problem. So if we assume all responsibility for things that aren't even having to do with us, uh, continually apologizing, trying to make sure that the relationship, that we're not rocking the boat at all. We're trying to make sure that the other person's completely okay, that they're happy, that they're content, that they're not going to leave. So it can be abandonment issues. It can be, um, different uh, attachment styles that are different forms of insecure attachment, generally anxious, that anxious, preoccupied, the please don't leave me kind of thing. I'll do anything to get you to stay goes along with that. And it takes time. It's in Jennifer was saying, well, maybe codependency. That can be it too. And those kind of tend to go hand in hand with, I would say, that anxious, preoccupied style and some of the other insecure attachment styles. If that, codependency, it's that excessive emotional reliance on another person. So um it's the I need this relationship to continue because without it, I have nothing kind of a thing. So um yeah. So again, boundaries and kind of this clarity on what a healthy relationship is, kind of the differences between, independence, interdependence, codependence, counterdependence, all of this stuff. It's not taught at the level that it really needs to be. And so it's because I just think most people need to have the stuff spelled out for them. I mean, it's not really intuitive, and most people don't grow up in a completely perfect environment. And frankly, not even perfect. They don't even grow up in a good enough environment where this kind of stuff is taught. I think that's the problem. Um, because for an environment to be good enough, it requires more than just love and understanding and decent treatment. It requires preparing a child for the real world, which involves teaching them all of these life skills. So nobody's really equipped for this. And uh, I think we all have gaps in our knowledge that we spend our adult time you know, uh, trying to make up for and trying to figure out. But when we do start realizing, oh, okay, this is why my life isn't working. Like these are some of the imbalances that are really negatively at work here. Then you bring that into your conscious awareness, and then you start working towards adjusting them. But so much of the process is, we all have this default behavior, these default ways of interacting with other people because it's for whatever reason, like um, our brain kind of chooses which way it handles stress. Like the whole Pete Walker thing that, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So, or friend defense. And our brain chooses for us. We don't consciously choose that. So, and then once we start realizing, oh my gosh, this is what's going on, or oh my gosh, I never realized I did that before. This is actually a problem. And then we start working on it, then uh, that's kind of when the magic starts to happen. That's when our lives start to work because we're correcting those imbalances. spiritual goddess says, "Do you have any tips on how to break a trauma bond little by little?" I've read about it, but I haven't really done much research on it. Um, I would say probably the biggest thing that you can do is to grow, uh, to kind of grow your support system. So those trauma bonds can be so intense because it's the the fear of potential loss, and then it's the relief of the reassurance that the relationship's going to continue, and it's riding those highs and lows that and plus it's also different when it's a parent. Those bonds are so deep, and I think any child, pretty much every child that's ever been abused has struggled with the exact same thing, because we're all inherently wired to to basically ingratiate ourselves to our caregiver, in order to get them in order to make sure that we survive. So that's a child's main job. If you're gonna survive, you need to be able to get along with others and kind of, anticipate the needs of your caregivers to make sure that they support you. So when a child is growing up in a healthy environment, or a good enough environment, they're not having to do that too much. It's the parent that's trying to anticipate the child's wants and needs. But in a dysfunctional environment, it's the opposite. The child has to learn how to interpret the parent's wants and needs, and walk on eggshells, and change things about themselves, hide things about themselves, erase things about themselves in order to kind of get through. So um, so it's a little different than trying to break a trauma bond with a partner. But I think if you can get some of that nurturing, some of that mother energy, or what should be mother energy, right? Or what we associate with mother energy, that kind of nurturing energy from positive places in your life. And I think oftentimes, um, we do this through like several people. So we might have just finding these qualities in friends or different people in your support circle. Not overly relying on them. I'm not talking about like in an imbalanced, reparenting, unhealthy, strange kind of way. I'm just saying it's okay to have these needs, to be like, I just, um, you know, I'm missing this mother figure in my life, and that's the relationship that I'm really missing, and wanting to be able to share certain things with people, and realizing that you can find a lot of these traits that you're missing in a variety of other people, both male and female. And I guess like acknowledging that when you're able to get those needs met, um, in that way. Does that make sense? And so the more that you're able to, meet those needs and actually meet those needs, not be disappointed that they're not getting met. Um, the more that you're able to get those needs met in a nourishing, healthy way, that's gonna feel good, because then you're actually gonna start getting those needs met, and then that pull of, the dysfunction and getting your feelings continually hurt, feeling let down, feeling, victimized, and all of this stuff, uh, it's gonna be so much easier to realize, you know what, there's just nothing here for me. Let's see. Yeah, I would agree. UNA says the fight, flight, or fawn. As a child, that fawning or that friend defense is usually the most effective response which stays with us. Yeah. Yeah, and that fawn response can come out in numerous ways, I think. It can come out as that ingratiating behavior. Um, I think you could even make the case for certain types of like regressive behavior where a person starts acting kind of cutesy or like immature. Um, it's a not maybe not conscious way of trying to ingratiate ourselves to another person. So, but you see this, more frequently in little kids, especially little kids, or I'd say under the age of 10 or 11 that have gone through a major change in their life, regardless of what that change is. They might have a new sibling that they're not really that they're kind of struggling to adjust to, or there might be other major stuff going on in their life, and all of a sudden they start kind of wetting the bed at night, or they start sucking their thumb, or they start um, doing baby talk, or, wanting to be held all the time. These kinds of things. It's a way of going back to a time and place where we feel more safe. And I think that other people are more inclined to want to protect us. Isn't it interesting? Like the way the human brain works, and it's all that we're just not even consciously aware of. It's so weird. Let's see. Um, Yes, that's good advice. Liberty says, she was threatening me with suicide if I leave. I was afraid in the beginning. His brother threatened to destroy me, creating lies. This was uh, the final end of this relationship. Just never stay in those relationships. Yes, I agree completely. When there's that level of like emotional blackmail that's going on, and that's exactly what both of those behaviors are. That I'm gonna destroy you with information, I'm going to release this information that's going to destroy you, or I'm going to kill myself unless you do XYZ. That kind of stuff is a no-go in a relationship. It's so over the top and so manipulative and so destructive. It's, there is no relationship. I mean, you're being held hostage at that point. There is no relationship. Let's see. Yes, Bliss says feeling safe is wonderful. Otherwise, I stay alone and garden. I do art, cook fabulous food, go to the ocean. That sounds wonderful. Mag, that's Magalodoro saying, um, let's see, let me scroll up here. Something about mom. Um, Magalodoro's mother is sending cards. It upsets her every time one arrives, and it's stopping her from moving on. But I feel like I'm missing. Here we go. Okay, I went no contact, but she still sends me cards at Christmas and for my birthday. I don't know how to make her stop without getting in touch again. Do you have any advice on how to deal with that? This is difficult because you don't have control over her behavior. Oh, Maglia Doro. Magliadoro. Magliadoro. Okay. Uh, th- oh, and your guy. Okay. Way off with all that. Okay. Magliadoro. Okay. So, um, what you could do is just write return to sender and put the cards right back in the mailbox. And you're going to have to keep doing that. So, um, yeah, because she's going to keep trying to reach out. But reopening communication to say, hey, don't do this is just going to reopen communication again. I know it's infuriating. I know it's frustrating. You could talk to the post office about uh seeing if they can hold mail from that address, but I don't even know if that's something that they do. Yeah, Bliss said, yeah, it's what I said too, return to sender. Um, yep. You could, well, yeah, I would just say return to sender. I was gonna say you could say something like return to sender no longer lives here. But then that, I don't know. I don't like to lie, and A, and then B, it could just kind of make things worse because then she might just start really contacting other family. Well, where did he move and where did he go? And yeah, Jennifer says, my dad does the same thing for my birthday and Christmas, and I'm no contact with him. I just tuck away cards from my dad. It's hard to even just throw them out. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good to either just put the cards away, to throw them away, or to return to sender. Yeah, and Bliss was saying with uh, the idea of return to sender no longer lives here. She's like, she might even drive and show up at his house. Yeah, she very well could. So maybe just the return to sender and um yeah. Bliss says, yes, my mom was queen of the silent treatment. Another manipulation. Yeah, silent treatment is just awful, isn't it? Okay, Magliadoro says that he moved to Australia to get away from her. They and cut off a lot of that side of the family because of her, actually. She lives in California. Wow. Yeah, he says, yeah, it's as far as I could go. Well, it sounds like it. How are you liking Australia? How long have you been there? Oh, I did not know that. UNA says you can also write refused on the envelope and give it back to the mailman. Yeah, that's a good one too. Bliss says I moved to Atlanta and it was the best thing I could do. Yeah, sometimes getting that space is incredibly helpful. Bliss says silent treatment is cruel and sick. Yeah, I agree. And incredibly painful. I mean, you're just twisting in the wind. That like the level of anxiety that goes along with it is just awful. Elizabeth asks, does burning letters help with breaking trauma bonds? It can. Um, Trauma bonds, it oftentimes takes a variety of strategies to help with that, but, it's really I think the main thing is realizing if this relationship is so significant that there's a trauma bond involved, that when that relationship is no longer there, there's there's gonna be this feeling of a very large void in your life, and so it can help tremendously to plan ahead for that and to try to, um, put in a bunch of good things, positive things in your life, so when this relationship isn't there, uh, or as you're trying to break these bonds with that relationship, you have other things in your life so that that loss doesn't feel as significant, especially with when you're dealing with when you're trauma bonded to a partner. I mean, there's so many different factors at play. There's tends to be unresolved uh, attachment um, challenges at play. There oftentimes tends to be kind of a pattern of codependency, um, or let's just call it. I like it better saying that excessive emotional uh, reliance on another person for whatever reason. Maybe it's culture. Maybe it's that's just how you were raised with thinking, oh, this is what love is. Like love is making this other person your whole life. Like that's what it means to be a good partner or what have you, not even realizing like, oh my gosh, I was making this person my whole world. I thought that's what we were all doing. Like I thought that was what we were supposed to be doing. I didn't realize that that wasn't healthy. So, um, just kind of realizing, okay, what is the pull here? And then also then the psychology behind it of it's these bonds are so deep because it's the highs and lows. It's not because of uh, love. It's a trauma bond. Oh, well, thank you. Liberty says, thank you for reading my messages. I watch you for almost 3 years now, and you've helped me so much in my life. I remember your advice almost all the time. Oh, well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you for that. I'm glad that I've been able to say some things that you feel were helpful. That's a really great way to phrase that, Jennifer. I agree. She says, I think you really have to be in the right mindset to break a trauma bond. So burning a letter won't break it unless you yourself are ready to break it. Yes, I agree completely. It's like people that get caught up in a cult and, um, they have this really difficult time, or I mean, that's any type of like abusive relationship, but where there's just this absolute devotion to this certain person. And no matter how horribly they're being mistreated. What this reminds me of is the R. Kelly situation. And he had, all these young girls in this house and they all wanted to be there and they were fighting with their family and saying that they weren't being held as captives, that they were there willingly. And of course, he's not treating them well at all. And, very manipulative and on and on. And when there's that much of a hook in us to another relationship, it's generally because it's meeting this other need. Um, it's exploiting a vulnerability that we might not even realize we have. And so that's what makes it so difficult is because it's a problem, but it feels like it's the solution. That's why we don't want to let go. But if you can see it, like Jennifer was saying, if you can see it as this is a trauma bond. This is a problem. This is not the solution that some part of my brain is hoping that it actually is. Like, there is nothing here for me. This is this is an illusion. This is a mirage, And this is, if I keep running after, like, you've really got to do some tough love with yourself. Like, if I keep running after this mirage, I'm just going to get further and further out into the desert. And for what? There's nothing here. It's just smoke and mirrors. It's, again, easier said than done, but knowing that you're not walking away from something that could potentially someday work, or that you're not walking away from the love of your life, or that you're not walking away from something that you think on some level could be a solution. Like, you're really acknowledging this is a problem. This isn't love. Love doesn't hurt. Love doesn't doesn't treat somebody like garbage. That the feelings I have for this person, these aren't love. This isn't love. This is these are the chemical highs and lows that are coming along with having my vulnerabilities toyed with. That's all this is. Let's see. Kenneth is saying, I just discovered that my father, whose family I grew up with, wasn't my biological father. The family I was abused by wasn't even really mine. Is it appropriate that I feel re-traumatized? Okay. I mean, you feel how you feel, and how feeling, I would imagine finding something like that out would kick up all kinds of emotions, all of which are completely valid. I guess my question would be, what about that situation feels re-traumatizing? Is it that you were lied to about the biology behind it, or what are some of the deeper emotions there? Yes, absolutely. And Changing My Life says, yeah, I'm doing this training for coaching survivors. It's that trauma bond is hard to break because it's your inner child that is bonded. That child bonded because they had a need they think this person meets. Yes. Yeah, it's just the kind of that reactivation of those um when those needs aren't met, especially when we're a child, they become a vulnerability, and we're not even aware of it. And then we get into a situation like this, and there's that level, we're confusing intensity for love. And especially when these relationships or connections to other people are meeting those needs some of the time. That's what it is. Like, when the good times are good, they're really good, but when the bad times are bad, they're really bad. And that's where all the confusion comes from. That's one of the reasons it's so difficult to leave. And there's just so much there. Yeah. And Elizabeth was saying, yeah, I was in the right mindset, but I still felt those trauma bonds. I had to unhook all the hooks one by one. Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. One of the things I think that helped me was just realizing that it's okay. I can feel however I'm gonna feel, but I don't have to act on it. And that it's not real. That it's this illusion I have of, oh, this relationship is gonna be loving, it's gonna be um, you know, I'm gonna have yeah, loving and safe and nurturing and all of this, that's my fantasy that I've created around this. That's not the reality of the situation. And repeating to myself, like, this is smoke and mirrors. It's just smoke and mirrors. There's nothing here for you. There's nothing here for you. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel mad. It's okay to feel disappointed and angry and all of these things. This isn't for you. This situation is not for you. This is not what you're seeking. Jack is talking about, people struggling with tagging me in the chat. And he was saying, that he'd suggested to me to consider rebranding with Dana Morningstar, or Thrive After Abuse with Dana, or something like that. I could do that. I don't know if it would matter though, if it would tag me though, if I did Thrive After Abuse with Dana Morningstar or something like that. If I fully rebranded it to Dana Morningstar, then, um, I mean, I like I'd have to go undo so much, because that's just all over the internet. I wish there was a way. Maybe there is a way. Maybe there's just a way that I can go and look at the chat settings to see if I can, um, if there's options for tagging. Okay, Kenneth is saying his father didn't try to find out. Father wasn't really interested in finding out, wasn't very involved with me, but he had custody of me. I got verbally abused, beat, and molested by a family member. Mm, yeah, that's all just absolutely horrific. And oh, yeah, it just makes me so angry when children are hurt in the way that you were hurt. My goodness. And it's not right, and it's not fair, and that should not have happened to you. That was not okay. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you for feeling how you feel. That's completely understandable. Let's see. Spiritual Goddess asks, do you have any advice for the thoughts that I have that tell me you're abandoning them when I think about going no contact, or you're leaving your family behind, and feeling so guilty and bad. But when I set boundaries, she disrespects them. Yes. So I think getting clear with yourself that it's reasonable and appropriate and necessary for boundaries in every situation. That this isn't, but we don't just have boundaries with problematic people, we have them with everybody. Whether we're aware of it or not, we have them. To what degree they're actually functional is another story altogether. But we all have our own boundary standards and deal breakers. Most of us just aren't consciously aware of where they are, like what they are and where they are. So um, the mindset of, family is forever. You've got to commitment is forever. You've got to stay with them through, regardless of how poorly they treat you. Uh, that's not correct, and that's damaging thinking. So that's just part of kind of the dysfunctional messages that people pick up in dysfunctional homes, keeping in mind it's very one-sided. Now, if you were to do the same thing to them, they wouldn't tolerate that. So this whole expectation of, oh, family is forever, you need to always keep your door open. It's the manipulative, problematic people that are saying that, right? It's probably not the other family members that have healthy boundaries. So, and again, they wouldn't, if the tables were turned and you were to treat them how they treat you, they wouldn't tolerate that. So uh, maybe also to kind of realizing or acknowledging, there's what's known as appropriate guilt and inappropriate guilt. And appropriate guilt is an emotion we feel bad when we've done something bad or wrong. Appropriate guilt is good. It helps guide our behavior. It helps us let us know when we're getting off track with something. We all hope that guilt is like I said, it's a good emotion. It's an important emotion. It's part of our kind of moral compass, if you will. Inappropriate guilt is when we feel bad for doing something that isn't bad. Generally setting boundaries. A lot of people really struggle with this. Oh, I just feel so guilty. I just feel so awful. I have to tell this other person no, and it's just uncomfortable and really awkward. And I feel like the bad guy. A lot of that inappropriate guilt um, can be resolved with having a better understanding of boundary standards and deal breakers. So, and that just takes time and practice. So once you get to the place where like, gosh, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. Like in order for a relationship to be healthy and functional, it absolutely has to require healthy functional boundaries. Like these things go hand in hand. It requires functional communication. It requires all of this stuff, or it can't be in my life because it's just, or I've got to have very, very low contact to where it's not sucking energy from me. And that goes back to the boundaries thing, figuring out, okay, where is that comfort zone with things? If you can't handle a phone call, can you do an email? If you can't do an email, can you do a text message? If you don't want to chat every day, can you chat twice a week or once a week or once a month? Just figuring out where is that line for you at this point in your life, and then keep making corrections, adjustments to it as you realize that you need to. But it's completely reasonable and appropriate for people to have boundaries. Um, it's part of maintaining your authentic self, like your individuality, and it's about respecting yourself, and it's about respecting other people. Um, so but that level of guilt, oh, I feel so bad for setting boundaries, that goes hand in hand with a dysfunctional family, and it's just getting rid of a lot of that disempowering the disempowering messages that we pick up along the way. And a lot of those messages, if they're not given by other dysfunctional family members, if they're given by healthy, well-adjusted people, then odds are they don't know the full context. And they don't even, or maybe they don't even realize that there is context because they've never experienced deep dysfunction. So they're going through life thinking that these platitudes are um, really great advice. Oh, well, all parents love their children, or families forever, or forgive and forget. And there's no context surrounding that. That's when people really get off track. Like, that's not necessarily bad advice or bad input, but it's also not 100% accurate either. And it's when the context is missing that people get led astray. So, okay. Yeah, and people talking about feeling guilty about feeling guilty. Yeah, and that's part of it too. And Elizabeth says, I heard a therapist say you can process that by accepting you feel guilty. Absolutely. And I would say that you can that's the step in processing all of your emotions, is to just acknowledge and accept that this is how I feel. I feel guilty. I feel sad. I feel mad. I feel however you feel. That's how you feel in the moment. That it is what it is, you know? And so part of processing it, part of working through that is understanding it and acknowledging it and then releasing it. Um, let's see, Fatima, um, I emailed you. I don't know if you saw that. I emailed you back a couple hours ago. Yeah. Bonnie was saying my mother used the guilt, shaming, blaming, spiritual abuse, and then would pull out the family is forever card. She used the entire arsenal. Yep. And that's the, um, yep, that's the manipulative kind of behavior, isn't it? It's, it's, I mean, it just really does a number on a person's thinking and the way that they understand the world with that. And it oftentimes takes decades to really realize, gosh, this is so twisted and manipulative. And oh my gosh, you know, uh, it's just so twisted. It's all twisted in to justifying her bad behavior. And this is not what family is about. This is not what um, you know. This is not appropriate. Yeah. Mm, yeah, I'm so sorry, Fatima. That just sounds very deeply disturbed and problematic. She says, my dad literally told me to treat him as my second God. He told me to put him first before my prayers and God. Mm, yeah, that's not even in the ballpark of normal appropriate behavior. That's very concerning. Sure, Huffle Mom says, can you help me understand the silent treatment? I just know the stupid kitty version of it. The silent treatment is a form, ironically, a form of verbal abuse. Um, but the irony is because there's nothing verbal involved. So the reason it's considered a form of abuse is because it's about power and control. Like all forms of abuse are about power and control. And so it's a grooming type of behavior that's designed to control another person's behavior. So it's the whole, if you don't do what I want, then I'm going to freeze you out. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm doing this to punish you, to teach you a lesson that if you do this, I'm basically going to make your life a living hell by creating this really tense, icy environment. And the result is the person on the receiving end of that is oftentimes, I mean, it feels like you're a sheet twisting in the wind, wondering, is this relationship over? Is it, what did I do? What do I say? What can I make it better? This is absolutely unbearable. This level of tension, I can't handle it. Like, please just say something, anything to me. And then you oftentimes find yourself um, apologizing for things that you're not even sure, you don't even know like what you're apologizing for. You're just like, whatever. Whatever you need me to do in order to stop this vice grip of tension that you've created, I'll do. So that's why it's abusive. Silent treatment is um, not the same thing as no contact, and it's not the same thing as ghosting. So ghosting somebody is, there might be communication back and forth, and then ghosting is they just up and disappear. They're not trying to teach you a lesson. Um, they're just generally not interested anymore. Okay. The um, no contact is not silent treatment because it's not about punishing another person. It's about being self-protective. So even though it's similar in that I am cutting off contact, it's um, there is no like kind of malicious intent of, well, I'm doing this to punish you. It's I'm doing this because can't have this in my life anymore. This is coming from a place of self-protection. Silent treatment is also not the same thing as needing some time where you don't want to have communication. Some people get really upset and they're like, you know what? I just anything more that I say right now is stuff that I'm going to be apologizing for later. Like I am so worked up. I need some time. I need to go for a walk. I need to clear my head. I don't even know what to say. I'm just so upset, but I am better off saying nothing at all. It's okay. It's okay to be like, I need some space. I need to not talk for a day, a couple days. The difference between getting space and silent treatment is that part of the punishing behavior of silent treatment is you don't know when it's going to end. That's what makes it so abusive. It's whenever that person decides you've suffered enough, that's when they reopen communication. With needing some space and time, you're like, I'm just really upset. I need to do my own thing for a while. That's fine, but it's important to let the other person know, I need some space. Um, and depending on the relationship, like you could say, so they're not, if, especially if there's attachment imbalances or challenges at play where they're kind of have that anxious attachment style where any type of discomfort or if the relationship starts feeling rocky, they're terrified that you're going to leave. You can always let them know, I love you. I'm still going to be here. I'm just really upset. I need to clear my mind. Can we talk about this tomorrow? That way the other person knows exactly what's going on. So it goes back to that level of like open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. It's like, I'm not trying to punish you. I just need to take a break. I just need to clear my head. So what happens though, actually, then I said that there's another way that the no talking tends to go down too in abusive relationships is if a person has a very high conflict person in their life, for lack of a better term, a person who likes to argue, who they're just continuing, or when they fight, you feel like this person's trying to pick a fight with me because whatever I say, they're going to take an issue with. Like there doesn't seem to be any resolving of anything. They just keep finding more issues with whatever I'm saying. And I feel like the direction that we're heading isn't towards a solution. It's towards they just want to argue, and I don't want to argue. And so a lot of targets of that kind of behavior um, end up just, they stop talking because they're like, every time I open my mouth, I'm like digging the hole deeper. So I'm not, but again, it's not coming from a place of they're trying to punish the other person. It's just everything I say is wrong. So I guess I'm just not going to say anything. So those are some of the different ways that silence is used in a relationship. Does that answer your question? Let's see. Missouri Cowboy asks, withholding confirmation. They hold the truth, and with a word, they could stop my self-doubt of my perception of reality. Is that also the silent treatment? I would say that that's more withholding, but it's abusive in and of itself because why have this, your partner, why punish them with that level of confusion, especially when it can be cleared up pretty effortlessly. But the reason it generally can't be cleared up effortlessly is because there's manipulation involved. And you'd see what they're really up to, right? Yeah. Let's see. That's a great way to put that. I like that. Darling Ebony says, I feel so awful saying no. Someone told me that boundaries are like muscles. You have to build them back up once they've atrophied. Yes, I like that a lot. It's a great way to think of them. Boundaries really are like muscles. And in so many different ways. I really like that because they get built up through use. And just like with weightlifting, your first day at the gym, trying to pick up, if you're a weakling like me, trying to pick up a 50-pound weight or something, no, because just that's not going to happen. It's too much. But over time, when you build up to it through time and through practice of just setting these smaller boundaries, you're using those muscles. And then there comes a day where you can lift those heavier weights and it's relatively effortless. And it doesn't even seem like a big thing at all. And then you think back to, oh my gosh, my first, I don't know, couple days or month or so in the gym. Boy, it was so awkward and so uncomfortable. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was struggling so much. And everything was my whole body just hurt. And it just was not really, I kind of still felt good afterwards because I knew I was on the right track. But sheesh, it required so much effort because you're undoing old habits and replacing them with new habits. So it's just exhausting because you're having to consciously think about everything, packing your gym clothes and going to the gym and how long you're going to be at the gym and what hours, what time is the best time to be there and what are you going to do when you get to the gym and for how long. And there's so much stuff to figure out, like with any new skill. But there does come a point with boundaries, especially, where it really does just become it just becomes part of your day. It's not something there. And of course, there's times that it's more difficult than others. It's a lot easier to set a boundary with somebody that we're not emotionally invested in than it is with somebody that we are. It's easier to set smaller boundaries than larger ones. These kinds of things. But when you start realizing, okay, if I say, if there isn't this good balance here, I'm saying yes to this other person, but I'm sacrificing the peace I have inside. I'm sacrificing my inner peace by saying yes when I really want to say no, or when I'm over giving. I need to find that good balance of what is a comfortable place for me to give and for me to interact with other people, where I'm not over giving, where that resentment, that frustration, that irritability is building up, or I'm able to be in that my comfort zone of what is still, you know, nourishing and respectful of myself, my energy, my time, my emotions, my money, my body, so on. Okay, let's see. Jack is talking about the book we read last month for book club, called Loving Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. He's recommending it to Fatima. And I know Hufflemom was yeah, he said, yeah, Hufflemom took a lot of that book to heart. Oh, I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful that book resonated so much with you. I think it's such a great, important message. And, the author of the book just says something so profound in the beginning of his book. He says that he describes his life in terms of before he loved himself and after he loved himself. And I just loved that. What a huge pivotal moment in how his behavior really started to change. and his attitude and just everything. Let's see. Huffle Mom says, Kenneth. Kenneth asked, I did go no contact with the family member, but I considered hurting them as an added bonus. Is that immature of me? It's understandable of you. When somebody has been victimized, anger, rage, wanting justice, wanting that person, wanting revenge, wanting them to suffer as you've suffered, that's all very human and very understandable when somebody has hurt you the way that you were hurt. So I guess I'm uncomfortable with using the word immature with regards to that, because that feels kind of shaming and judgmental, when the reality is you feel how you feel. We all feel how we feel. I don't know if there's really anybody that would be in that situation where they were victimized, that they wouldn't take some sort of delight in the pain of somebody who had hurt them. It's stuff we don't talk about, right? And I think that's why there's so much shame involved with stuff like that, is because nobody really talks about that. But it's it's understandable. It's a to me, I think it's a normal human emotion. And I would focus more on the fact that you set some healthy boundaries there, gave yourself some distance, and did a good job of protecting yourself. And that is very mature and very healthy. And good job. Okay, Fatima. Oh yeah, no problem. You don't need to respond to me at all. I just wanted to make sure that you got it. And let's stay in touch this weekend, if that's okay with you. And we'll just kind of figure out what we can do. I'll be around, okay? Let's see. Jennifer says, for me, it's hard to set boundaries with everyone. For instance, I'm not emotionally invested in my next door neighbor in my apartment building, but it's hard to set boundaries and to make him stop being creepy. And it's insidious creepiness. It usually just starts with regular small talk. Girl, I get you. I used to be the exact same way. I really struggled with, I just didn't want to upset anybody. So yes, let me kind of backtrack what I was saying a little bit. When I was saying it's easier to set boundaries with people that you're not emotionally invested in, that's true to a point, but that doesn't necessarily mean that even setting boundaries with them is going to be easy. And it really just takes time and practice. And so maybe the boundary that you make with this guy, and maybe it's not to completely just say, to fully verbally assert yourself around this guy. Maybe it's you do something, I don't know, such as you put your headphones in, or you pretend that you're talking on the phone. This is seemingly kind of passive and all that, but I really think that you got to start where you are, and then you'll build up these skills. So kind of just reclaiming your power where you can. So when you walk into your apartment building, you have your phone and you're pretending that you're talking to somebody. And then that way, if you run into him, you're able to tell him, oh, you've got that built-in excuse. Oh no, I'm on the phone. Right. And with time and with practice and thinking about things ahead of time, if this guy kind of corners you in the hallway and starts talking to you, to have some sort of built-in something or other to say to him. Like, I've really got to get going. I can't stay and talk, or I'm in a hurry. Or I've got plans. Even if, and you guys know, I'm not an advocate of lying, but I think you can kind of justify the truth. Like, if your plans might be that you're planning on going home and watching TV and you don't want to be interrupted, or that you're planning on going outside to, I don't know, to surf the internet. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you're going in and out of your apartment for. Like, you don't owe people, especially creepy people, definitely don't owe them the full truth. So if confronting him directly, like, dude, your behavior is really creeping me out, like, back up, then that's okay. And it's okay to do what you need to do in order to maintain some distance from this guy. But I would also want to clarify that situation. Those can be really difficult because even though you're not emotionally invested in him, he still lives in the same building. So, or he still lives around, like, you're still going to see him on the regular basis, and his presence is uncomfortable. And then adding, being assertive with him and saying, hey, basically, like, I'm not comfortable with you, is going to add to that level of discomfort, which that's kind of why I was saying, oh, you could, just pretend you're on your phone. That's what I would do. I would just pretend that I'm on my phone. So you're not making eye contact. You pretend that you don't even hear him when he calls your name, or you just smile and nod like, hey, and you just keep walking. That kind of thing. Let's see here. Felicia asks, why is the narcissist trying to sleep with my friends now that we're divorced, or my so-called friends? Either to upset you, or just because he wants to get laid, or a little bit of both. Possibly to get back at you for some sort of perceived injustice. But yeah, I like how you said, okay, or my so-called friends. That's the bigger thing is, narcissist is going to narcissist. Like, he's going to do whatever it is he's going to do. The bigger thing is, what are your friends doing? Because they're the ones that are supposed to have your back and supposed to be, like, nourishing and supportive and all that. And if they're, sleeping with your ex, then I have to kind of question these friendships. Oh, yikes. Jennifer said, I did try to move past him to get to the door, but he stepped in front of me to ask if I was ever married before. And then it went on from there. Oh, that's so uncomfortable. How often do you, not even uncomfortable, it's really scary. How often do you see this guy? Yeah. And Rissa says, report him to your landlord and to the police. And Jennifer says, I've tried to have a more irritated tone in my voice these days when he acts that way. It probably doesn't seem that way to regular people, but for me, it's a step in the right direction, I think. Yeah. How do you think it would work if you were to pretend to be on your phone? And I guess I don't know where his building is in relation to yours, if he's always coming out, but I just think that'll help to kind of, it happens a couple times a month at least. Felicia says, that's my weird with my ex. I would just never go and try to sleep with people he knows. Yeah, normal people don't, right? I mean, that behavior is it's very like passive aggressive and not something that most people go and do. Yeah, I would just try to not, I would just distance yourself from all of that. It's just a bunch of nonsense you don't need in your life. I agree. Rissa says, your neighbor sounds dangerous. This requires an escalation. Your safety is at risk. Oh my gosh. Jennifer says, the doors to the building, not always my actual apartment, but he's made his way inside my apartment once to ask if I could help him program his new phone. Yikes. Yeah, that's really, really scary, girl. I would talk to management about it. Um, Boy, it's terrifying that he was so brazen enough to kind of push his way into your apartment and with some sort of excuse. So that'll probably, I would anticipate that happening again. Um, yeah, and Kenneth is saying, could you maybe carry pepper spray with you? Yeah, that would be something. Um, yeah, that's difficult. To me, this is not a situation that boundaries are gonna, uh, the issue here isn't communication and it's not boundaries. The issue is this guy, like Rissa was saying, this kind of needs to escalate on your end, in order to stay safe. So he doesn't care about your boundaries at all. And that's terrifying. So he's probably not going to respect any boundaries that you set, other than like physical distance ones or, um, I don't know. I guess if it was me, I would keep something, pepper spray or something on you when you're walking into the apartment or in your pocket. And I would just pretend to be on your phone or to call a friend or somebody and, um, and talk. And if he tries to interrupt you, stop him and just say like, "Oh, I'm on the phone with, I'm on the phone. I can't talk right now." Something like that. And you just always be on the phone, kind of a thing. And it might come down to, where you have to move. Yeah, I agree. Changing my life says, yeah, that kind of behavior can't be helped. He is boundaryless. Yep. Bliss says, well, can she tell him to leave her alone? I mean, come on here. Yeah, yeah, she can. And Jennifer, you could say something. Um, there's a variety of ways that you could say it. The thing is, though, this guy is more than likely not going to care. He might be more responsive if you don't make it about him. So, like, if you were to say, your behavior is really creeping me out, like, you're really creeping me out, stop it. He strikes me as the kind of guy that's going to want to argue that. Oh, no, come on, girl. No, I'm not creepy. Like, what's your problem? What do you have against men? I just think you're hot. I just want to talk to you, blah, blah. And just continue to not take no for an answer. He might be more receptive if you were to say something like, you this might sound really weird, but you remind me of somebody that I had a bad experience with. And I don't mean to be rude, but like your presence really makes me uncomfortable. And I realized that I just need to kind of keep my distance. That way he can't argue that. Like, it's not about him, it's about you. Or you could say, you know what, I've had some stuff go on in my life and I'm not comfortable with men getting this close to me, or men, um, I'm not comfortable with people I'm not comfortable being talked to or having conversations outside it makes me very uncomfortable. Where you're, again, like, you're putting it on you. So he can't effectively argue that, you know? Jennifer was saying, I kind of wonder if I should document all my encounters with him. Yeah, I think if you're thinking that, then you need to. Oh, yuck. Yeah, she says, "Oh, and last week when he came out of the laundry room, he asked me when my boyfriend will be back in the country because it must be hard for me to not have someone to rub my feet." Ugh. Ugh. Yeah, slimy, icky, creepy, inappropriate. Yeah, it's difficult. I guess I would encourage you to come up with something. Don't wait until you run into him to try to think of something. Try to come up with something ahead of time of what you could say. Kind of some different variations of things he says to you, like, "Oh, girl, like, you're looking so good," or "Must be hard to not have somebody, I'd be so good to you," or "Be hard to not have somebody wanna rub your feet," or this, that, and the other. Uh, Thinking of I'd get maybe 2 or 3 different responses that you could come back with. So you're not so knocked off balance when that kind of stuff happens that you you know, that you maybe smile and laugh, or, like, you just kinda try to make light of it and keep going on. Yeah, Kenneth says the only reason to say something like that is to make you uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't even know, or it's gotta work sometime, right? Like, there's gotta be some woman out there, I would think, somewhere that would it's a creepy pickup line. Like, really, yeah, who does that work on? Ugh. Jennifer says, "I'm sorry to bring this up, it's just that I don't trust my judgment. So thank you for all of your advice. This has been happening for years now." Yeah, well, Jennifer, for what it's worth, I think that you have pretty good judgment. Your perception of every situation that you've brought up here is, I think, spot on. Yes, that's creepy and inappropriate. Um, yes, that's uncomfortable. Um, y you know, it's more, I think, you really getting comfortable and acknowledging that you know when something is comfortable for you and when something's uncomfortable for you. You really, really do. So kind of building up more faith in your own perceptions of reality. Jennifer says he talks to everyone around here though. I think he's just lonely, even though he has a wife. Yeah, or he could just be a serial cheater, or they could be swingers, or who knows? But something that you could say, if he does make kind of icky, inappropriate, seemingly sexual comments like that, to think of something that would be a turnoff. Um, so if he says, "Oh, well, it's gotta be hard to not have somebody rub your feet," and just you could say, "Oh man, uh I don't know, man. I've got some really rancid foot fungus." I don't know. Just something like that. Or, um, "My feet normally stink after a long day. I think my boyfriend's probably pretty relieved he doesn't have to rub them." But again, it's hard to think of stuff like this on the fly. I mean, I just whenever I've had situations like that, and I've also had more than my fair share of creepy, inappropriate stuff like that, I'm always at a loss. I go right into freeze mode. I never know what to say, and then I end up either I tend to end up it's back to that fawn defense. I'll smile and nod or kinda joke. I'll make light of the situation. I don't handle it sucks. I don't handle it well at all. It takes me a little while to kinda gather my thoughts after something like that happens to try to, handle it more to handle it better next time. But in the moment, I tend to just freeze. So, for whatever that's worth, it's easier said than done, and it really does take practice, but it can help to practice some responses before, you know, uh, ahead of time, so you're not having to come up with them on the fly. Jennifer says, "I'm just so bad with ignoring people, but I will try. It's just especially hard when he corners you." Yeah, that's creepy as that's really creepy, and it might help to kinda go the disgusting route too. To if you do have to say something, um, if he makes a comment like, "Oh, oh, you're looking so good," or, um, if he talks about a foot rub, "Oh, my feet just really stink so bad." Um, I'm sure my boyfriend is relieved to not have to smell that, or, "Oh, you look so good." Oh, just talking about disgusting things that would be a turnoff. Oh, I'm so glad he thinks I've just had the worst gas all day. Things that are not sexy at all to kind of, deflate this weird fantasy thing that he has going on. Yeah, Bonnie was saying, "Yeah, that's inappropriate. These narcissists, they try to shock you with saying or asking inappropriate things, and they're just testing you." Yeah. Yeah. That kinda stuff. Or it's the whole, like, I'm only joking if you say no." Kinda thing, or it's just kind of crossing that line, but where they can kinda backtrack it if his wife were to find out about it. "Oh, I was just joking. Oh, you know me, I'm just a flirt. Da 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 da, it doesn't mean anything," but it's it's wildly inappropriate. You know what would be funny? Jennifer, uh, this is oh my gosh. I wonder, how they have it, they used to have those, like, joke stores, and they have this one gag gift thing, it was like a fart spray, and it was really potent. This was a big thing in, like, junior high, so this was a long time ago. So I don't even know, I'm sure that they still sell it, but to have something like that on your keychain, and when he's around, just spray it. It's so rancid, and then just make some sort of comment about how you have, like, irritable bowel syndrome, and that you just can't help it, and do you see what I'm saying? Something like that would just really gross him out and make him wanna stay away from you. Laughing, yes, stink bombs. Yeah, I would just start talking about your bowels. Like an inappropriate old person, right? Yeah. "Oh, I've had the trots all day. I'm just so oh, gosh, excuse me. This is just absolutely it's just absolutely miserable." And, um, you know, yeah, and I would just try to have fun with it. Yeah. And you could do that. I mean, and UNA was saying, I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but I'd be direct. Yeah. I mean, and that would be the most ideal way, is to just have it be direct. But um I think Jennifer's struggle is she's really struggles with setting boundaries of at any level. And so we were kind of trying to come up with some more ways where it wouldn't be this constant um tension, because this guy's probably most likely not going to respect that, and he's going to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, and um keep justifying his behavior. But yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I agree too. Absolutely, Rissa. You're absolutely right. She says, I just want to state that it isn't, she says to Jennifer, I want to state that it isn't your job to repeatedly find creative ways to put him off. You obviously want no part, and he is scaring you. Report him. Yeah, I support that as well. And I agree. This is not, it's upsetting and disgusting and frustrating that anybody has to be in a situation where you have to try to figure out creative ways of keeping yourself safe. Like, it's no way for anybody to live. So these are all, it's wherever you feel comfortable along that spectrum, I think it's completely valid. Let's see. Yeah. And I think that's a good comment too. Bliss says, just saying to him, dude, I have a boyfriend. I am not interested in anyone but him. Yep. Dude, I have a boyfriend. I love him. These kinds of conversations aren't cool. Like, I'm not comfortable with this. My boyfriend wouldn't be comfortable with this. Yeah. And if he says something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm just joking," or "I'm just a flirt," or "I didn't mean anything by it," then still you can continue to hold your boundary and just say, "Yeah, but yeah, but for real. Like, I have a boyfriend. This kind of stuff is not comfortable for me." Hmm. Jennifer's talking about her feet and says her ex used to say to her on more than one occasion that he wanted me to get foot reconstructive surgery because of what ballet did to my feet, which, to be honest, I don't see a whole lot wrong with my feet other than they're pretty narrow. Yeah, that just sounds like some weird kind of negging kind of a thing. Like, they just try to plant seeds of insecurity. Yeah. Huffle Mom was saying, oh, if he says, oh, I'm just a flirt, you could say, well, I'm just not interested. Or uh, UNA says, I just don't do flirts, period. Yeah. Yep. There's a range. And somebody else had said, well, kind of uh, say something like, oh, well, what does your wife think about something like this? Or just to flat out tell his wife. The thing is, though, I mean, she's got to, if they've been married for any length of time, she's more than likely justified and minimized his behavior. Oh, he's a flirt. That's just how he is. That was just how he was raised. Or, he was raised with all brothers, or he was raised with all sisters, or she's been making excuses for it forever, is my guess. But yeah. Yeah, I think ideally it would be great if you could just say, yeah, this is uh you know, it just makes me uncomfortable. It's interfering with it's, um, you know, I'm not my boyfriend and I aren't comfortable with this, or I'm not comfortable with this. It's just, you know, I don't like being joked with like that. Yeah, and I would agree. Sunny Day is saying, "Whatever you say to him, do not smile at all." Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, UNA was saying, "It's great talking about this. It's hard, especially in the moment." Yeah, it is, and it's hard coming up with stuff when you're approached like this. So I think it is great that we're able to kind of brainstorm some ideas here. Jennifer says he's told me before about how he's miserable with his wife. Oh, I'm sure. And he might be, he might just be, who knows? They could have, he could be cheating on her this whole time. They could have an open marriage. Who knows what their situation is? Um, but yeah, I would find it hard to believe that a guy like that has been faithful this whole marriage. I think his wife probably is well aware of what a creep he is. Kevin, hey Kevin, asks, has anyone heard of pure OCD or intrusive thoughts? Basically compulsive thinking. Yes. And so in terms of OCD, those um, intrusive compulsive thoughts tend to be certain types of thoughts, such as hurting somebody else. Um, oh, trying to think. I'd have to go look it up. That's the only thing that's coming to mind right now is the thought of, oh my gosh, well, um, what if I stabbed my brother? Oh, that would be so terrible. Or what if I threw my baby off the balcony? And then they start really panicking because they're like, I've done not feeling murderous. Like, I don't want to hurt my brother or my baby. I don't know where these thoughts are coming from. And then they get so freaked out by these dark and disturbing thoughts that they're having. So it's, yeah, it's interesting. And it can be difficult to kind of switch gears. Oh, Bear. Hey, gosh, has it been that long? He says, it was 7 years ago that you started helping me. I normally can't chat, but I have the night off. I just really wanted to thank you. Well, it's really great to see you. Gosh, it's been a long time. So I hope you're doing well. Let's see. Mm. Fatima says it's called harm OCD. I have it. Are there any strategies that you use that helps with that? Good. Good to hear it, Bear. He's saying, Dana, I'm doing great. I'm in a really healthy relationship. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Uh, Kevin's saying, I think we need support for these kinds of things. A lot of the thoughts are just nonsensical, not necessarily dark or disturbing. Are they like anxiety, like things that you've got to do? Is there a certain, I guess, is there a certain category that these thoughts fit into? Or do you find yourself kind of obsessively thinking about, I don't know, I don't know, certain things in your life, like kind of just getting fixated on, I don't know, a coworker that's been giving you trouble, or running late for work, or things that you haven't done that day. Like, oh, I didn't get the laundry done again, and then you're just kind of rehashing these, things that you're not getting done. Um, let's see. Fatima was saying, Dana, for example, if you think of something disturbing, to try to picture that thing as something pleasing. Embrace those thoughts and turn them into something pleasurable and comfortable. That's what helped me. I guess, could you give me an example? So let's say if a person's having the thought about some type of harm, how would they take that thought and turn it into something pleasant and comfortable? Magalodoro says, I find myself obsessively thinking about what might go wrong in various things or various situations. Yeah, and that sounds, isn't it interesting all the different ways that anxiety can exist in our brain? And, it can exist as um, kind of obsessive thinking about like what, like catastrophizing, like what could go wrong possibly down the road someday if. And then there's that just primal fear, which leads to panic attacks. And then there's this kind of rehashing of of situations that might have already happened, where we're trying to replay, just trying to sort them out and figure them out, and come up with a solution. Let's see. Jennifer asks, would overthinking fall into obsessive thinking? I my I bet you there's some overlap there. I guess the way I look at it is obsessive thoughts are, um, they're repetitive. It tends to be about the same type of subject matter, but not necessarily. It could be about anything where it's on your mind, and it won't get off of your mind. Your brain is just going, going, going. It's like your brain's like a dog chewing on a bone. It's just going, 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 going on these thoughts. Whereas, um, overthinking might be over kind of taking there's some forward momentum there, even though there might not be a solution. It's sort of like, you're kinda laying out different options. So it's trying to come up with the solution, whereas obsessive thinking is just spinning in more of a circle. Does that make sense? The difference might be slight, but it's, both forms of thinking can be absolutely exhausting. But, so I think there's similarities, but there's some differences too. I'd be curious to see what other people have to say about that. That's just my off the cuff, uh, take on the difference between the 2. Oh, I see. Okay. So Fatima was saying, okay, let's just say, um, because I don't want to trigger anybody or anything, but let's say, for example, the dark thought that pops into somebody's mind is strangling their cat. And she said, instead, you try your best to change the image in your head to you petting your cat. Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah, and she says, you have no control over these obsessive thoughts. They just appear out of nowhere. And Tammy was saying, yeah, I do think there's definitely a difference. She says, I do both, and they're both exhausting. Uh, Jennifer was saying, yeah, I guess a good example for me is the whole neighbor debacle we just went over. That's probably overthinking or obsessive thinking. My therapist wanted me to try medication for my OCD as well as ADD, like we discussed last week. Yeah, however, I think that's uh, that type of situation is is anxiety inducing. So when you have a kind of a predatory person, I think some degree of um, planning is our brain's way of trying to keep us safe. So it's to me, it's understandable to continually because if we're not able, this is you know we all use a variety of ways to keep ourselves safe. We use boundaries. Hey, no, it's not okay with me. Back it up. We use kind of um, unspoken language, body language. Then there's, like I'm not really comfortable. Please go away. There's um, there different ways that we are trying to signal to keep ourselves safe. And for and I know in your situation, Jennifer, one of the challenges has to do with you struggling to get in tune with your anger. And that's one of the challenges for anybody that's struggling with anger, because anger is that emotion it's there to keep us safe. It's there when a boundary has been crossed. And so we're able to take action to protect ourselves. And so for people that are on more of that ingratiating, excessive people pleasing, dis you know major discomfort with conflict or confrontation side of the spectrum, they're oftentimes not in tune with their anger because anger is just their anger is terrifying for them. They don't know how to kind of redirect that anger into an appropriate way to keep themselves safe, because they probably, like in your situation, have been taught your whole life that um, to try to be okay with situations that are just not okay. So, um, however, with all that said, I still think a person, I don't think it's that uncommon for a person to be mulling over ways to try to get out of this uncomfortable situation, or, oh my gosh, what should I do? I have this creepo neighbor who, just keeps being inappropriate, and it's on your mind because it's a legitimate problem. It's not um overthinking about something trivial, I guess, or something that's really a non-issue. Like, this is a legitimate issue. Yeah, I like that, Fatima. She says, and also when a person gets these dark thoughts, to just keep telling yourself, you know what, you have no control over them. Therefore, it's not your fault. You're not a bad person or a murderer for thinking those things. You just have no control over them. Yep. And there's so much truth to that. Yeah, your brain is just, coming up with all kinds of stuff. Uh, and I love the idea of then turning that into something positive. Yeah. Kevin was saying, yeah, I've learned a lot about pattern interrupts, but I haven't put it to practice much. I think at the end of the day, I need to process the traumatic wounds that I have inside me from childhood. Otherwise, I'm just managing something at the surface level. I think that's very insightful of you. And I think Pete Walker would agree. Were you there for that book club discussion, or have you read his his book, especially what is it, the Tao of Fully Feeling? He really outlines a, a whole process about what it means to get in tune with feelings and how to process them. Oh, he says I started rereading it the other night, but no, not that one. It was the CPTSD book. Yeah, check out the. Oh, did you? He says, yeah, I suggested the Pete Walker book for book club. Yeah, I love him and I love the way that he writes and really love the way that he thinks. It's to me it's so helpful to have it structured like that. Here are the steps. Like here's the process. Here's how you can know if you're on this path. He just really lays things out in a very clear, coherent, linear fashion, which I find really helpful. So, but that the Tao of Fully Feeling is wonderful. And Jennifer, that might be a book too, if you haven't read that you might want to consider as well. And if I remember, it's been a bit since we've read it, but I think he does talk about that, how when feelings kind of get stuck or they get misplaced, instead of if a person's not comfortable with feeling sad, they might instead feel mad. Or if they're not comfortable with anger, then that can come out as sadness or depression. Rissa asks, is it normal to be apathetic when you no longer live with your narcissist? It can be, in the sense that that sense of apathy tends to go along with depression. And um, if if you were coming out of a relationship that had a lot of intensity and that there were a lot of, yeah, just kind of heightened emotions, then afterwards life can feel kind of flat. So it could be that as well, just the shift from just intensity to stillness. But it could also be some potential depression there. I mean, there'd be more symptoms than just apathy, but apathy can be a big one for depression. Not everybody experiences depression as sadness. Magaladoro says, "Oh, that's interesting. I rarely get angry, but I'm often depressed." Yeah, isn't it though? And we um it's interesting because a lot of that comes from the kind of environment that you grew up in and how certain emotions were role modeled. and kind of expectations that were set. So for a lot of people, I think they, kids in general, frankly, I think grow up in homes where their anger, it's oftentimes silenced, it's denied. They're not allowed to be angry. Kids are told, oh, I'll give you something to really cry about, or oh, you have it so much easier than I ever had it, or oh, you're angry, you're angry with your brother, you need to go hug and make up. Like, they're just not allowed to be angry. Like, anger is an emotion that most people are just not comfortable with, and they don't know how to handle it, and they definitely don't know how to appropriately role model it. And so kids tend to learn growing up that anger is bad. And so for a lot of those kids, especially if they default more into like that fawn defense, where they're using people pleasing strategies to get through, then they're really not comfortable with their anger. And as the result, it does tend to manifest more into sadness than anything, or numbness, which is, kind of along that kind of depressive spectrum there. And getting in tune with it, which again, this Pete Walker book is fantastic. The Tao of Fully Feeling. We did a book club thing on it a while back, but he talks about that, getting in tune with the different emotions and acknowledging them and allowing ourselves to fully feel them. Yeah. He said, yeah, Dana, that's it. They used to do exactly that. They never let me be angry. And I do use the fawning defense a lot. Yeah. It can be very, uh, very overwhelming to get and scary to get in tune with anger because of potential consequences in the past, or what we associate anger being like. If we had a person in our family that didn't handle their anger well. So maybe there was maybe one or two people in the family that were allowed to be angry, and they did express or maybe they weren't allowed to express their anger, but they did anyhow, but it just came out as, kind of hate and hurt, and just this rage. So if that's all, when we think of, okay, this is how you express anger, if we don't have any kind of middle ground for that, it can be confusing. Like, well, I don't know, how do I get in tune with my anger in a constructive way? Because I feel like for a lot of people feel like, oh, if I allow myself to feel it, it's like turning on a fire hose, and I can't control it, and it's just spraying everywhere, and I'm scared I won't be able to turn it off again. And I have to, like, function in life. I have to, go to work and pay bills and, interact with other people. And I don't have this luxury of turning on this anger and then trying to control it. Like, that's terrifying. So I'm just gonna to keep it off. And it's a process getting in tune with that anger and learning how to uh, to process it. Jennifer was saying, I actually just looked up the Pete Walker Complex PTS book today. Finally, I'm going to purchase it tomorrow when I get paid. It seems so interesting. It really is. It really, really is. And keep in mind too that um, if you have a library card, you can request it at your local library. And they have ebooks and audiobooks and, of course, paperback. So that's a thought too. Oh, Felicia asked, how do you go no contact when you have to co-parent? And that reminds me, I had brought up the app thing before. There's apps out there. Uh, so it's really not possible to go complete no contact, but you can definitely go low contact when you're attempting to co-parent or parallel parent with a difficult person like this. So sometimes, I think oftentimes it has to be set up through the court. Hopefully somebody else in the chat can can give us more specifics with that, but there's kind of just these like mediator type apps, which is nice because then you have a paper trail of everything. So you're communicating through this app, and it's, it's all being documented. So there's no reason for them to call to be to, if they need to act like an adult. They need to be appropriate. And this app helps to kind of to monitor that. So if you do need to go back to court, you can say like, I'm just getting a bunch of verbal and emotional abuse from this person. They're harassing me. They're doing this, they're doing that. Getting some sort of third party app like that um, can really help. So let's see. Yeah. And Felicia says, I pretty much have to act like the abuse didn't ever happen and let things go, which is extremely hard for me. But it's clear they don't have a conscience and were never emotionally invested like us. Yeah. Yep. And realizing too, Felicia, um, that you're dealing with a deeply dysfunctional person. And like you said, there is no conscience there. There's there isn't an emotional investment, and uh, this has nothing to do with with you or you being lovable or you being worth being emotionally invested in. It's these kinds of people don't get emotionally invested in anyone. It's all very surface level. I kind of think of it like mafia, where you see these mafia movies and then they're hanging out and having dinner at each other's houses and they seem like they're close, but they're not. They could end up killing each other that night and sleeping just fine. Like there's no emotional depth there, and it's one of the most heart-wrenching, heartbreaking experiences to fall in love with somebody who has no empathy or conscience or guilt or remorse or a sincere emotional has the ability to be emotionally connected to another person. It is so profoundly painful. And um I think just reminding yourself that like it's not you, it has nothing to do with you, it's 100% him. And um and thank goodness you've got you're limiting the amount of damage that he can do to you and to your life. But yeah, it's really, really it's hard. It's hard to understand that there's people like that are out there and that we wouldn't see them coming. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. That's a really great point, Bonnie. I agree completely. She says, so regular management of anger, even towards yourself, is very important so that it doesn't morph into depression. I like that. Yep. Yep. And so that would be kind of in a way going back to what Fatima was saying earlier about when we have these we know we were talking more about dark thoughts, but these uncomfortable thoughts of maybe anger, rage towards ourselves, self-loathing, kind of really critical, shaming thoughts. Oh, when are you ever going to grow up? When are you ever going to get it together? This kind of critical comments that we're telling ourselves to change that and to change that into compassion and grace. So we're approaching. So if we find ourselves attacking ourselves, to just to try to soften that and say, you know what, you did the best you could at the time with the information that you had or with the skills that you had. And that's all anybody can do, you know? Or, okay, yeah, you made a mistake. So what? Welcome to being human. get in line. Right? So just having that compassion and grace for ourselves is so huge. And trying to replace that critical parent voice with a more of a nurturing parent voice. Um, Magdaloro saying, I wonder if my anger towards myself is why I'm depressed. Well, it could definitely be a big part of it. I guess if you think about it this way, when we have all of this anger, you probably even heard people have referred to depression as that, as it's anger directed inward, where when we're angry at ourselves, we're being pulled in two different directions continually. There's the part of ourself that's, and it's weird to think about ourselves having all of these like multiple parts, right? But there's kind of like your authentic self, and then there's the part of you that's angry at that authentic self. That's that critical parent voice. Oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. What's wrong with you? You should, you know, da 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 da. It's constantly criticizing. Nothing's ever good enough. Well, why didn't you do it this way? Well, why didn't you do it better? Well, so and so did it better. And or just constant sarcasm and snark and put downs and just really beating yourself up about things. So yeah, changing that, paying attention to your internal dialogue, and uh that's a big part of that, is that whole thought stopping. So when you start tuning into that critical, or just the inner voice in general, whatever it might be saying, and that goes back to like treating yourself with dignity and respect, and realizing that this is this is just the foundations of appropriate behavior. This isn't something that um, you need to work for or earn. This is how we interact with each other. This is how normal, well-adjusted people interact with each other, because it's how you bring out the best in another person. It's how you nourish them. Think of a healthy, well-adjusted parent and how they interact with their child. And it's kind of so, and then interacting with ourselves in that same way. So yeah, it's worth paying attention to, and maybe even doing some journaling about that, of where this anger towards yourself comes from. Um, what kind of thoughts go along with that anger towards yourself? Is there what kind of behavior goes along with that? Do you then how do you handle your anger? Do you eat? Do you spend money? Do you lose yourself in video games? Do you drink? How do you try to stifle that? Denora was asking, well, how do I manage anger without suppressing it? That's a big question, and that's a fantastic question. Uh, if I remember correctly, that book, the Pete Walker book, the Tao of Fully Feeling, talks about this in much more depth. I will try to dig up my notes from that book, and we can talk about that next week. I need a pen. I don't have a pen. The Tao of, okay, I just got to remember that Tao of Fully Feeling, those notes. Um, here's something that works for me. And like I said, we'll cover what Pete Walker has to say about it, because I think his book was just excellent. One of the strategies that I use is, well, I think first and foremost, recognizing that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel how you feel, first and foremost, especially if you were hurt in some sort of way. then it's anger. There is a thing called righteous anger where it's an appropriate, healthy response to be upset when you've been mistreated. And so then channeling that anger into something, uh, at a minimum, that's not destructive. There's a term out there called sublimation, and it's taking anger, hurt, kind of the energy and those emotions, and then channeling it into something good. So you might have heard me talk about this in the past when I was going through everything with the ending of that relationship with Jack. I was so angry. I've never experienced anger like that before in my life. I mean, it was just pure rage. And I had to make the decision, um, that I I wasn't going to let what happened to me ruin my life. Like, I just wasn't gonna give him that satisfaction, and I wasn't gonna let him win. I just really was just so angry at how much damage he did. And, um, and then I didn't see coming, and I just had a lot of anger about it in a lot of different ways. And so that was the direction. That was kind of my North Star, in that the direction that I was gonna head. That at a minimum, the first step is I first step is I'm not going to end my life over this. And then once I took that option off the table, like suicide, not an option, off the table. Second option, or second point of I'm not gonna let this ruin my life. And then once I got clear on that, and that was a huge shift, making that decision, not waiting to see, okay, how are the chips gonna fall? Um, Hoping that I was gonna come out on the other side of this being relatively functional. I had to make the decision. I will not let this ruin my life. I just can't express to you how important that is to make that declaration. Even if you don't know anything other than that, making that declaration that you're not going to let this ruin your life. And then the third step is deciding that you're going to take what happened to you, and I would say anything that happens to you, and use it towards your highest and greatest good. That gives you a direction in which to head and in which to channel that energy. So the ultimate goal is gonna be that you're gonna take whatever happens to you, it's not gonna end your life, it's not gonna ruin your life, and you're going to use it for your highest and greatest good, and in time, you're going to use it for the highest and greatest good of others. And for me, that was this kind of completion process of my anger. I needed that path in which to head, and so anytime I was getting caught up, with that anger, it was channeling it into something constructive, cleaning out my car, doing laundry, cleaning out a junk drawer, exercising, doing anything I possibly could to have that energy work towards my highest and greatest good, and then have it work towards the highest and greatest good of somebody else. That could be you sit down, you're like, "I am so freaking mad," and you sit down and you write out some really beautiful, supportive postcards to people that you haven't talked to in a while, letting them know how much they mean to you. And it just y y like, putting good out into the world, uh, is it's such a wonderful, like, neutralizer of negative energy. It really helps. So that's one way that really helped me. Thank you, Kenneth, for the Livestream donation. I appreciate that. Oh, Felicia's saying I'm frozen. Oh boy. Oh, and we are, um going to be over, so we'll wrap up here in a second. You know, Kevin, okay, so Kevin says sublimation is simply the channeling of unacceptable impulses, thoughts, and emotions into more acceptable ones. For instance, when a person has sexual impulses they would like not to act upon, they may instead focus on rigorous exercise. Refocusing such unacceptable or harmful impulses into productive use helps a person channel energy that otherwise would be lost or used in a manner that causes the person more anxiety. Yes. Yeah. It's controlling. Um, if you look up defense mechanisms, they're listed in they're categorized. This is another interesting topic for an interest. Again, like it's so helpful when you're like, oh, this is a thing, and this is a thing that we all have, and these are other defense mechanisms besides just fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Like here's all of these other like psychological defenses that we all use. And knowing, oh, this is like, this is a thing, and these are the words to describe the thing. It makes so much more sense. And um, yeah. But anyways, defense mechanisms, the psychological ones are divided up into categories. There's, and what are they called? There's like I don't know if it's I don't remember if it's mature and immature or um it might be that mature and immature. And so the more mature defenses are the ones that are more constructive and kind of conducive to a person's health and well-being. Because again, we all have stress, we all cope with stress in whatever way, the best way that we know how at that time. And it's generally through, it's not even it's through these different defense mechanisms. And so realizing which ones that you've been defaulting into is really eye-opening. Thank you. He says primitive and less primitive and mature. Okay. So, okay, so with that said, let's do um Fatima says, my sister is planning suicide and I'm still building my emotional strength. What should I tell her? She wants to leave soon. How about Fatima? Oh boy, that's let's talk. Email me, okay? It's almost midnight here, but let's let's email about this tomorrow. I would encourage you if she's actively planning it, if you really think that um that this is a serious thing, then you've the right thing to do is to call CPS or to call the police and let them know what's going on. Okay. But, and I know that that's scary and that there's a lot of other elements at play, but l- please email me and I'll do my best to, um, kind of to talk through this with you and see what we can do. She says if she doesn't kill herself, that makes her a coward. And that's a great question. UNA says, is she willing to talk on a juvenile suicide prevention hotline? And Fatima says, I tell her that I'm here for her, but she says she's serious about doing it. Yeah. Yeah. It really sounds like she needs um, some major help. And that's gotta be a lot to carry around. a lot of pressure. I know you love her. She's your sister, and that you're concerned about her and wanting her to get support. And that's just it's a lot for you for anybody to carry around, and especially to feel alone in that. And I agree. Liana was saying, I think you should get her help immediately. It's a cry for help, and you will have the burden on your shoulders if you don't take action right now, and it's not fair to you. Yeah, I would agree. And Jennifer was saying, yeah, it's just so much to put on your shoulders. Um, it's more than she's feeling troubled. It's just not something that you can handle. And it is probably best you alert professionals for her. I agree completely. You know, this is something that um, I think really CPS, Child Protective Services, since she's a minor, uh, or calling if it's urgent, calling 911, or calling the non-emergency police and saying, this is what's going on in this house, and can you help us? So, like I said, if you let's let's talk, and soon, okay? Okay. So let's see. With that said, let's take a moment and we'll just kind of get recentered. So take some time to find a spot that's comfortable, whether you're sitting down or lying down. And let's take a series of breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Taking some time now to acknowledge that there is so much that is good and right about you, that there are so many things that are lovable about you, and that you are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. That you are not alone. There is so much that is good and right about you. That you are lovable and likable, and that you are doing the best you can with the information and the skills that you have. That you are worth giving yourself compassion and grace. That you are worth nourishing and nurturing, and that it's okay and healthy and appropriate for you to have boundaries and standards and deal breakers. That you are worth protecting, and realizing that you know when something's comfortable for you and when something's uncomfortable for you. And that it's okay for you to take some sort of action to make an uncomfortable situation comfortable. And you don't need to walk on eggshells or sacrifice your inner peace to keep peace with those around you that are crossing your boundaries. There is so much, so much that is good and right with you. And please take some time to fully feel that, you are worthy. You are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect simply because you are alive. That you are lovable and that there is so much that is good and right with you. And giving yourself that compassion and grace for being human, for handling things in the best way that you knew how at the time, and that's all any of us can do. And it's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to be angry or sad or mad or glad or any of those feelings. It's completely okay. And acknowledging, you've been through a lot. You've really been through a lot. And it's just absolutely wonderful that you're able to be here and to support each other in the chat, and that you're so dedicated to making your life work, and just the level of curiosity and bravery for people coming into the chat and talking about these deeply personal, oftentimes really painful things in their life. It's powerful, and it's really healing for a lot of people to realize that they're not alone. So taking some time, visualizing, just giving yourself a really big hug, letting yourself know that you love you, that you love you, that you are lovable, and that you see that there is so much lovable and good and right with you, and that you're here to help nourish and nurture yourself. When you're ready, go ahead and come on back and open your eyes. So, thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And just please know that you're not alone, and that you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. And I just would encourage anybody that's feeling um, suicidal or uh, at a very dark place right now, please consider there are suicide hotlines. They're in, I think, pretty much every country. They're 24 hours a day, they're free, and there's people there to talk. So please know that you're not alone, and that you do matter, that you really do. So We'll see you guys next week. Take care. Okay. Good night.